What's up guys, welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. I'm your host Caleb, and today we've got some more busted Aetherdrift spoilers, so let's get right into it. Right after you check out that whatnot link in the description down below, you get a free $15 and it helps out the channel. Another thing that really helps out the channel if you're enjoying the content is just liking, commenting, and subscribing. Now let's get right into Loot, and this is quite possibly his most broken iteration yet. He's 5 CMC in Teamer colors, he has Vigilance, Double Strike, and Haste, all very good keywords, and then additionally he's got 3 Exhaust abilities. Exhaust is a new mechanic in Aetherdrift. It's basically, an ability that you can only activate once. Notably, we can reset exhaust abilities if we sacrifice the commander, recast it, return the commander to hand, recast it, or just straight up blink the commander. Any new iteration of the commander will reset those exhaust abilities. Now, the first one is just straight up 1 green mana, add 3 mana to your mana pool. Pretty good there. The next one is literally just Ancestral Recall, a banned card. You tap this guy for 1 blue mana and draw 3 cards. And then the last one is Lightning Bolt. Tap loot and then you deal 3 damage to any target. Pretty good there. What I like about this is it's just going to be a Teamer Storm deck. I do want to talk about the top end of this commander real quick because I do think he is going to see some CEDH play. The first thing I want to talk about is he has 5 CMC. What does this mean? This means we can Eldritch Evolution into Hullbreaker Horror, and then Hullbreaker Horror is very good at generating infinite mana. And then once you have infinite mana with Loot, Loot can draw your entire library with his second ability. And then again, Hullbreaker Horror can easily bounce Loot back to your hand, so you can recast him, draw your deck. Pretty busted there. Another busted combo that is notorious in CEDH that Loot will take advantage of is Food Chain. If we have infinite casts of Loot, that means we get infinite Loot abilities. And then again, Loot can generate his own mana here. So we don't have to rely on the Food Chain mana only being able to cast creature spells. We can just use the mana we generate from Loot. And then once we have infinite red mana from Loot, we just use his Lightning Bolt ability to kill the entire table. Because remember, Food Chain is going to generate infinite mana with Squee, and then we get infinite creature mana, and we're going to use that on Loot, and then we're going to filter the mana with Loot's ability, basically. Pretty busted here. The last thing I want to talk about is Loot being an amazing combo piece with Displacer Kitten. Whenever we're able to cast a spell, we get to blink Loot. That's going to untap him and refresh all of his abilities. This is probably going to be powerful in casual and CEDH, and that's why I think this is going to be a really cool and fun storm list. Especially in casual, right? We can really utilize spells that blink our commander and other creatures, kind of go into a blink strategy that takes advantage of cards like Eternal Witness. Your Eternal Witness can return your blink spells back to your hand. You can reduce the cost of all your spells, and then you're kind of just storming through your deck. We get to use some really fun cards, and I'm going to talk about them in this video. The first thing we can do with this commander is manually storm through our entire deck, making our opponent's life hell. We'll need Chakram Retriever and Displacer Kitten. What's going to happen here is now whenever we cast a non-creature spell, we're going to trigger both of these cards. Chakram Retriever is going to untap Loot, so then we can tap him in response to the Displacer Kitten trigger, and then we let the Displacer Kitten trigger go off, and that blinks Loot. What this means is every time we cast one spell, we get 2 Loot activations. This means we're not only able to draw 3 cards very consistently, we're also able to add 3 mana to our mana pool very consistently, and now we've generated this non-deterministic Storm Goldberg machine. Another pretty broken thing we can do since our commander is 5 CMC and we are running Displacer Kitten is we can Eldritch Evolution straight into Atali Primal Conqueror. What this does with Displacer Kitten on the battlefield is pretty broken. Now, as long as we're at least casting 1 non-creature spell off of Atali's trigger, this means we can blink Atali again, and you can kind of just cast everybody's library this way. It's not going to make you any friends, but it is something we can do with this commander. The next thing you probably want to do with this commander is get more Loot, right? Loot is a pretty busted card. I want him for way cheaper, maybe like 2 CMC. Marvin Murderous Mimic is going to be perfect here. We just get all of Loot's ability. We will be lacking the haste, which is what makes Loot so good here, so that does suck, but still, just having more Loot abilities to activate is going to be pretty powerful. That's why we're probably also going to run both of the Sakashimas Vial duplication, and quantum misalignment. Remember, this is a storm list. The more loots we have, the more storming we can do. Another thing that can really break this list, especially if you go with the route of creating as many loots as possible, is mobilize and vitalize effects. There is a lot of ways to untap all of our creatures and team our colors. We can use extra combat steps that say untap all creatures. There's honestly a plethora of mass untap effects in these colors, and they're really cheap, which is just going to add to the storminess of this deck, and it's just going to help you rifle through your deck, find your key pieces, and win the game. Another thing that's probably going to be pretty powerful here is Defense of the Heart. We're running a lot of creatures that just kind of combo with each other. I'm not saying you want to do that because you probably don't make a lot of friends that way, but if you were trying to do that, Defense of the Heart would be perfect here, because this can grab your Displacer kitten, your Atali, it can grab your Chakra Retriever, your Displacer kitten. You just get to grab all your broken stuff, and it's kind of crazy. Another thing that's kind of crazy in this deck is Seedborn Muse. Now, I know we have to reset Loot's ability consistently in order to get enough value to justify a Seedborn Muse, but whenever we're including all these other tapping creatures and it just turns into a deck where you want to tap all your creatures as much as possible, I think Seedborn Muse is going to be amazing here. You can even pair it with Alchemist Retrieval that just gives all of your spells flash, so now we're playing on our opponent's turn. That's going to be very powerful in a storm list. That way we can decide when we want to win the game and when we want to go for it. We don't necessarily have to get tied down to doing it on our turn. Another thing that's going to be really powerful whenever you're thinking about building a loot deck is just straight up blink effects. Like Deadeye Navigator is absolutely insane here. For 2 mana, you blink loot and reset all of loot's abilities. I also do want to include a couple ways to untap loot. That way, again, we're able to activate those abilities more than once, and Seedborn Muse kind of fits this ability as well. If you get a Seedborn Muse and Deadeye Navigator on the battlefield, it's going to be 100% over for your opponents. You get to remove all their creatures, you get to draw a ton of cards, you get to add a ton of mana to your mana pool. It's just going to be really hard for them to come back from that. You can also super lean into that blink strategy and include stuff like Eternal Witness, Reclamation Sage, Mole Drifter. If we're doing the blink, we might as well lean into it. That way we're not super commander dependent. Additionally, if we're including stuff like Ghostly Flicker, if you Ghostly Flicker loot and Eternal Witness, that can grab you another flicker effect from your graveyard like Essence Flux, and then you can cast Essence Flux to flicker your Eternal Witness to bring Ghostly Flicker back, and you can kind of just cast those spells indefinitely this way, especially if you keep adding more and more mana to your mana pool with loot, and you're reducing the cost of these Ghostly Flicker effects as well. Even just having 2 blink effects in your graveyard, and then you have something like Eternal Witness, Displacer Kitten, and loot on the battlefield, this creates a weird storm scenario where we can cast a spell, blink loot, and Eternal Witness, returning Essence Flux to our hand. Then we're able to tap loot for mana to cast Essence Flux. That's going to trigger Kitten and again Eternal Witness, because that's what we're blinking with the Essence Flux, returning another blink effect to our hand. And again, this is where the storm thing happens and you kind of run away with the game. Anyway, guys, that's just my first impression of this commander. I'm really enjoying these first impression videos. I just get to put my raw thoughts out there. I get to talk about CEDH and casual at the same time, which I don't get to do a lot because I'm either locked into CEDH or locked into casual. So I kind of just like talking about the commander as a whole. So let me know if you're enjoying these videos, because I know I am. Also, let me know in the comments down below if you want a full fleshed out video of this deck tech in a casual stance or CEDH stance, because again, I think this guy could be a really fun commander to build around. With that being said, let's thank those patrons. Excessum, Irrelevant, Praetor, The Professional Heal. You guys are amazing. I hope this helped you guys in your deck building endeavors, and I will see you guys in the next one.